Picture this. You close your eyes and think about your grandmother's apple pie. Instantly, your mouth starts watering. You can smell the cinnamon, feel the warmth radiating from the oven, hear the bubbling of the filling through the golden crust. But here's what's absolutely mind-bending about this moment. Where exactly is that experience happening? Your grandmother isn't here. The pie doesn't exist. Yet somehow your consciousness just conjured up a reality so vivid it triggered actual physical responses in your body. Your brain fired electrical signals, released chemicals, activated memories stored across billions of neurons. But none of that explains the most fundamental mystery of all. How did those electrical impulses become the rich, subjective experience of remembering? How did chemistry become consciousness? For decades, scientists have been wrestling with what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. We can map every neuron, trace every electrical pathway, catalogue every chemical reaction in the brain, but we still can't explain how any of that creates the inner theatre of your mind. The colours you see, the emotions you feel, the voice in your head reading these words right now. None of it should exist according to our current understanding of physics. But what if we've been looking in the wrong place entirely? What if consciousness isn't produced by the brain at all, but instead tapped into something far more fundamental, something woven into the very fabric of reality itself? By the end of this exploration, you'll understand why some of the world's most brilliant physicists and neuroscientists are beginning to suspect that consciousness might not be an accident of evolution, but a fundamental feature of the universe itself. Now, prepare yourselves, we begin. Today we're diving deep into one of the most controversial ideas in modern science. The possibility that quantum field theory, the strange and counterintuitive foundation of all physics, might hold the key to understanding consciousness. We're talking about fields that exist everywhere, permeating every inch of space, connecting every particle in the universe through invisible networks of information and energy. This isn't just wild speculation anymore. Cutting-edge research is revealing connections between quantum mechanics and biological processes that were once thought impossible. Scientists are discovering quantum effects in photosynthesis, bird navigation, even the microtubules inside your neurons. The line between mind and matter is starting to blur in ways that would have been considered pure fantasy just decades ago. But I need to warn you up front, this journey will challenge some of your deepest assumptions about how the world works. We're going to explore ideas that sound like science fiction but are grounded in rigorous scientific research. Ideas that suggest your thoughts might not be confined to your skull, that your consciousness might be connected to every other conscious being in ways we're just beginning to understand. The quantum world is strange enough on its own. Particles that exist in multiple places simultaneously, information that travels faster than light, effects that seem to defy common sense at every turn. But when you start connecting quantum mechanics to consciousness, things get even weirder and more wonderful. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is a quantum field? Imagine space itself as an ocean, but instead of water, it's filled with invisible fields of energy and information. These aren't empty regions waiting to be filled. They're dynamic, fluctuating, alive with constant activity. Every type of particle in the universe has its corresponding field. There's an electron field, a photon field, fields for quarks and neutrinos, and every other fundamental particle we've discovered. But here's where it gets interesting. These fields aren't separate entities floating around in space. They're the space. They're the fundamental substrate from which everything else emerges. When we say an electron exists, what we really mean is that the electron field has been excited in a particular location. The particle is just a localized vibration in an underlying field that extends throughout the entire universe. Think of it like this. You've probably seen those videos where someone drops a pebble into a still pond, creating ripples that spread outward in perfect circles. Now imagine that pond extends infinitely in all directions. And instead of one pebble, there are countless disturbances creating an incredibly complex pattern of overlapping waves. That's closer to what quantum fields actually look like. Waves upon waves upon waves, all interfering with each other in ways that create the rich tapestry of reality we experience. But quantum fields have properties that would make your head spin if you really tried to visualize them. They exist in what physicists call superposition, which means they can be in multiple states simultaneously until something forces them to choose. They're entangled with other fields across vast distances, sharing information instantaneously in Inuki action at a distance. They ways that Einstein famously called SP fluctuate constantly, even in what we think of as empty space, creating virtual particles that pop into existence and disappear again in time frames so brief they barely qualify as real. This isn't abstract mathematical poetry. These effects have been measured, tested, and confirmed in countless experiments. Quantum field theory is the most successful scientific theory in human history, predicting experimental results with accuracy that extends to more than 10 decimal places. Every piece of modern technology, from computers to lasers to MRI machines, depends on our understanding of quantum fields. Yet despite this incredible success, most physicists treat quantum fields as purely physical phenomena, energy and matter following mathematical rules, but nothing more. The idea that these fields might be connected to consciousness, to subjective experience, to the felt sense of being alive and aware strikes many scientists as absurd. They see it as mixing up two completely different categories of phenomena, but that clean separation between mind and matter is starting to look less and less tenable, because consciousness has some very peculiar properties that seem to mirror the strange behavior of quantum fields. Consider the binding problem in neuroscience. Your brain processes visual information in dozens of different regions simultaneously. Color in one area, motion in another, edges and shapes in others. Yet somehow all this distributed processing gets bound together into a single unified visual experience. How does that happen? How do separate neural processes occurring in different locations and at different times get integrated into the seamless movie of consciousness you experience right now? No one knows. But it bears a striking resemblance to quantum entanglement, where separate particles maintain mysterious connections regardless of the distance between them, or consider the hard problem of consciousness itself, the subjective, first-person experience of being you. Science can explain the objective third-person aspects of brain function with impressive detail. We can track neural firing patterns, measure neurotransmitter levels, map the flow of information through different brain regions, but none of that explains why there's something it's like to be conscious, why there's an inner experience at all. This explanatory gap has puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries. But quantum mechanics has its own version of the same mystery. We can calculate the probability that a quantum system will be in a particular state when measured. We can predict experimental outcomes with incredible precision, but we have no idea what's actually happening during the measurement process. How does a quantum superposition collapse into a definite state? What determines which possibility becomes reality? Some physicists think consciousness might be the answer to both puzzles, that the act of conscious observation is what causes quantum wave functions to collapse. That consciousness isn't produced by physical processes, but is instead the fundamental feature of reality that allows physical processes to manifest definite outcomes. It's a radical idea that turns our usual understanding completely upside down. Instead of consciousness emerging from complex arrangements of matter, matter emerges from the collapse of quantum possibilities by conscious observation. Instead of mind being a late evolutionary development in an otherwise mindless universe, mind is the primary reality from which physical phenomena crystallize. Instead of being isolated islands of awareness in an ocean of dead matter, conscious beings are interconnected nodes in a vast network of quantum information. This perspective suggests that the quantum fields permeating all of space might not be purely physical after all. They might have what philosophers call psychophysical properties, aspects that are simultaneously mental and material. The same field excitations that manifest as particles when viewed from the outside might manifest as experiences when viewed from the inside. If this insane, you sounds completely in good company. Most mainstream scientists think it's pseudoscientific nonsense. The idea that quantum mechanics has anything to do with consciousness violates their fundamental assumptions about how the world works. They point out that quantum effects are noisy environment inside biological systems. They argue that consciousness incredibly fragile, easily destroyed by the warm phenomena, but a growing number of researchers operates on timescales and size scales that are completely different from quantum, are finding evidence that quantum effects might be far more robust in biological systems than anyone previously imagined. Plants appear to use quantum coherence to achieve near-perfect efficiency in photosynthesis. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement in proteins in their eyes. Even the microtubules inside neurons show signs of quantum processing. These discoveries are forcing scientists to reconsider their assumptions about the relationship between quantum mechanics and biology. Maybe warm, wet, noisy biological systems aren't the quantum-destroying environments we thought they were. Maybe life has evolved sophisticated mechanisms for protecting and exploiting quantum effects. Maybe consciousness itself is one of those mechanisms. The implications are staggering. If consciousness is fundamentally connected to quantum fields, then every conscious being is connected to every other conscious being through the underlying fabric of reality. You're inside your skull. They're part of thoughts, and experiences aren't trap that extends throughout the universe. This, a vast interconnected web of information and awareness, doesn't mean you can read other people's minds or telepathically communicate across vast distances. The connections might be too subtle, too deeply buried beneath layers of classical physics to manifest in such obvious ways. But it does suggest that the boundaries between self and other, between mind and matter, between individual consciousness and universal awareness, might be far more permeable than we've ever imagined. Some researchers are even exploring whether quantum fields might provide for phenomena a mechanism that mainstream science has long dismissed. Things like intuition, creativity, mystical experiences, even claims of psychic abilities. Not through supernatural means, but through natural processes we're only beginning to understand. Conscious minds, processes that connect to the deeper patterns of information flowing through quantum fields. The mathematics of quantum field theory reveals structures and symmetries that seem almost too elegant to be purely accidental. Conservation laws that ensure information is never truly lost. Holographic principles that suggest the entire universe might be encoded on its boundary. Emergent spacetime that arises from more fundamental quantum correlations. These aren't just abstract mathematical curiosities. They're hints that reality might be far stranger and more interconnected than our everyday experience suggests. And if consciousness is indeed woven into these fundamental quantum structures, then we might be approaching a revolution in our understanding of reality itself. A revolution that makes the shift from classical to quantum physics look before we get too carried away with these like a minor adjustment. But mind-bending possibilities, we need to examine the evidence, because extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof, and the scientific community isn't about to abandon centuries of materialist thinking based on philosophical speculation alone. The story really begins in the 1990s with a British physicist named Roger Penrose and an American anesthesiologist named Stuart Hameroff. They proposed something that sounded absolutely insane at the time. They suggested that consciousness might arise from quantum processes inside the microtubules of neurons. These are tiny protein structures that form the skeleton of brain cells, and Penrose and Hameroff believed they might be nature's quantum computers. Their theory, called orchestrated objective reduction, claimed that quantum information processing in microtubules could explain the unity of conscious experience, the binding problem, and even free will. When the theory was first published, it was met with withering criticism from both physicists and neuroscientists. The brain was too warm, too wet, too chaotic for delicate quantum effects to survive. Quantum coherence would be destroyed in femtoseconds, far too quickly to influence neural processing. For years, it looked like the critics were right. But then something unexpected happened. Scientists started discovering quantum effects in biological systems that should have been impossible. In 2007, researchers found evidence of quantum coherence in photosynthetic complexes. Plants were using quantum superposition to explore multiple energy pathways simultaneously, finding the most efficient route to transfer energy with almost perfect accuracy. This wasn't supposed to happen. The protein environments in photosynthetic systems are just as warm and noisy as neural tissue, yet somehow life had found a way to protect quantum effects from decoherence. Evolution had discovered quantum engineering long before humans even knew quantum mechanics existed. The discoveries kept coming. Birds navigate using quantum entanglement in cryptochrome proteins in their retinas. The quantum compass allows them to literally see magnetic fields as overlays on their visual perception. Bacteria use quantum effects in their light harvesting complexes. Even the sense of smell might depend on quantum tunneling, allowing molecules to be identified by their vibrational signatures rather than just their shapes. Each of these findings chipped away at the assumption that quantum effects couldn't survive in biological systems. But the real breakthrough came when researchers developed new techniques for detecting quantum coherence in living tissue. What they found was remarkable. Quantum effects weren't being destroyed by biological environments. They were being protected, enhanced, and exploited. In 2013, a team of scientists used advanced spectroscopy techniques to study microtubules extracted from neurons. They found evidence of quantum resonances that persisted for much longer than anyone thought possible. The protein structures weren't random, chaotic environments. They were highly ordered, crystalline networks that could maintain quantum coherence through mechanisms we're still trying to understand. But correlation isn't causation. Finding quantum effects in brain tissue doesn't prove they're responsible for consciousness. That would require showing a direct connection between quantum processes and subjective experience. And that's where things get really interesting and really controversial. Some researchers have started looking for signatures of quantum processing in brain activity itself. Using techniques borrowed from quantum physics, they're analyzing EEG and fMRI data for signs of quantum correlations, patterns that would indicate quantum entanglement between different brain regions, non-local connections that classical neural networks couldn't explain. The preliminary results are tantalizing but far from conclusive. Some studies suggest that certain types of brain activity do show quantum-like correlations, patterns of synchronization that seem to violate classical limits on information transfer. But these studies are at the very edge of what current technology can measure, and the effects are subtle enough that they could be explained by classical mechanisms we don't fully understand yet. Even more controversial are studies that claim to find correlations between quantum field fluctuations and human consciousness. These experiments monitor random number generators while asking people to try to influence them mentally. The idea is that if consciousness can interact with quantum fields, it might be able to bias random quantum events in measurable ways. The results have been hotly debated for decades. Meta-analyses of hundreds of studies show small but statistically significant effects that seem to resist conventional explanation. Skeptics argue that the effects are due to experimental flaws, statistical artifacts, or publication bias. Proponents claim they're evidence of genuine mind-matter interactions mediated by quantum fields. What makes this debate so contentious isn't just the scientific evidence, but the philosophical implications. If consciousness can influence quantum processes, then the materialist worldview that has dominated science for centuries might be fundamentally incomplete. We might need to expand our understanding of reality to include consciousness as a basic feature of the universe, not just an emergent property of complex matter. This brings us to one of the most radical proposals in modern physics. Some theorists suggest that consciousness might be connected to what's called the zero-point field. This is the quantum energy that exists in empty space, the constant fluctuations of quantum fields that create virtual particles and maintain the uncertainty principle even in perfect vacuum. The zero-point field contains an almost unimaginable amount of energy. Some calculations suggest that a single cubic centimetre of empty space contains more energy than all the matter in the observable universe. Most physicists dismiss this as meaningless because we can only measure energy differences, not absolute energy levels. But a few researchers wonder whether consciousness might be able to tap into zero-point field fluctuations in ways that classical physics can't describe. If that sounds like pure science fiction, consider this. Quantum field theory already tells us that information is a fundamental feature of reality. Every quantum system carries information about its state, its history, its correlations with other systems. This information isn't just abstract mathematical description. It has particles behave and interact. Some physical reality. It affects how physicists think this quantum information might be the bridge between mind and matter. Consciousness might not be made of particles or energy in the conventional sense. It might be made of pure information, patterns of quantum correlation that exist in the fields themselves. These information patterns could influence physical processes without violating conservation laws or requiring mysterious new forces. This perspective suggests that what we call the mind might actually be a field phenomenon. Just as electromagnetic fields can store and process information in computers and communication systems, quantum fields might store and process the information patterns we experience as thoughts, memories, and perceptions. Your consciousness might not vast information field, the implications God by it, like be generated by your brain, but rather access into signals from AEA radio tuning far beyond neuroscience. If consciousness is fundamentally connected to quantum information fields, then it might exist at levels of reality we've never imagined. Every quantum system, from subatomic particles to galactic clusters, universal information network, participates in the consciousness might be present in form wherever some primitive information is processed and integrated. This doesn't mean electrons are conscious in the way humans, but are conscious. It suggests that the capacity for experience, for information integration, for something resembling awareness, might be a basic feature of reality that manifests differently at different scales of organization. Simple systems might have simple experiences. Complex systems like brains might have complex experiences, but the underlying capacity for experience might be universal. Some researchers are exploring whether this universal field of consciousness might explain phenomena that have puzzled scientists for decades. The fine-tuning of physical constants that allows complex structures to exist, the apparent directedness of evolution toward increasing complexity and awareness. Even the measurement problem in quantum mechanics, where consciousness seems to play a special role in determining which quantum possibilities become real. These ideas push the boundaries of science into territory that makes many researchers uncomfortable. They blur the line between physics and metaphysics, between objective reality and subjective experience, between what can be measured and what can be experienced. But they also offer potential solutions to problems that have resisted conventional approaches for generations. The question isn't whether these ideas are true in some absolute sense. Science doesn't deal in absolute truth, only in models that help us understand and predict natural phenomena. The question is whether treating consciousness as a fundamental field phenomenon leads to new insights, new experiments, new ways of understanding the deep mysteries of mind and reality. And that's exactly what's starting to happen. Researchers are developing new experimental techniques to test quantum theories of consciousness. They're designing studies to detect quantum coherence in living neural tissue. They're building mathematical models that describe how information patterns in quantum fields might give rise to subjective experience. The results are still preliminary, still controversial, still hotly debated, but they're pointing toward a new understanding of consciousness that could revolutionize not just neuroscience, but our entire conception of what it means to be human in a quantum universe. The experimental evidence is starting to accumulate from multiple directions, and some of it is genuinely surprising. In laboratories around the world, scientists are finding correlations that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding of how brains work. Patterns of neural activity that seem to violate the speed limits of information transfer between neurons, synchronizations across brain regions that happen faster than nerve signals can travel. Take the work being done at Princeton University's Engineering Anomalies research program. For nearly 3 decades, researchers there have been studying what they call consciousness-related anomalous phenomena. Their experiments involve people attempting to influence random number generators through mental intention alone. No physical contact, no electromagnetic signals, nothing that classical physics would recognize as a mechanism for influence. The results show small but persistent deviations from pure randomness when people focus their attention on the devices. The effect sizes are tiny, usually just a fraction of a percent deviation from chance, but they're consistent across thousands of trials and hundreds of operators. When the data is analyzed using the same statistical methods used in medical research and particle physics, the probability that these results are due to chance alone drops to less than 1 in a billion. Critics point out that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and small statistical anomalies aren't enough to overturn our understanding of reality. They argue that subtle experimental flaws, unconscious bias, or unknown classical mechanisms could account for the effects, and they're absolutely right to demand rigorous scrutiny. Science progresses by challenging assumptions, not by accepting convenient explanations. But here's what makes the quantum consciousness hypothesis so intriguing. It doesn't just explain anomalous experimental results. It also offers new perspectives on ordinary consciousness that might resolve long-standing puzzles in neuroscience and philosophy. Consider the binding problem again. Your visual system processes different aspects of what you see in separate brain regions. Color gets processed in one area, motion in another, depth in a third, object recognition in a fourth. Yet you experience a single integrated visual scene. How do these separate processing streams get bound together into unified perception? Neuroscientists have proposed various solutions involving synchronized neural oscillations, but none of them fully explain how distributed processing becomes unified experience. Quantum theories of consciousness suggest a different approach. If neural microtubules can maintain quantum coherence across different brain regions, then information processing in those regions could become quantum entangled. Entangled systems share quantum states instantaneously, regardless of the distance between them. If consciousness emerges from quantum processes, then entanglement could provide the binding mechanism that creates unified experience from distributed neural activity. Your visual scene feels integrated because the quantum processes underlying different aspects of vision are literally sharing the same quantum state. This isn't just philosophical speculation anymore. Researchers at the University of California have developed techniques for detecting quantum entanglement in biological systems. Their preliminary studies suggest that certain types of neural activity do show signs of quantum correlation across different brain regions. The effects are subtle and difficult to measure, but they're consistent with quantum theories of consciousness. Even more fascinating are studies of what happens to consciousness under anesthesia. When people lose consciousness, there's a dramatic reduction in the complexity of brain activity. Neural networks that normally show rich, dynamic interactions become simpler and more predictable. But there's also something else. The quantum coherence that some researchers believe underlies consciousness appears to be disrupted. Anesthetic drugs don't just reduce neural firing rates. They seem to interfere with quantum processes in microtubules. Stuart Hameroff has shown that anesthetics bind to the same protein sites that quantum theories predict should be involved in consciousness. When these binding sites are blocked, quantum coherence is lost and consciousness disappears. This creates a testable prediction. If consciousness really depends on quantum processes in microtubules, then drugs that enhance quantum coherence should intensify conscious experience, while drugs that disrupt it should diminish consciousness. And that's exactly what researchers are starting to find. Some psychedelic compounds appear to enhance quantum coherence in neural tissue. The subjective effects, expanded awareness, enhanced creativity, feelings of connection to something larger than oneself are consistent with what quantum theories would predict if consciousness became more coherent and interconnected. Meanwhile, compounds that disrupt quantum processes tend to reduce or eliminate conscious experience. But evidence comes from studies perhaps the most compelling of what happens when people have profound spiritual or mystical experiences. These aren't just subjective reports that can be dismissed as wishful thinking. Modern neuroscience can now measure brain activity during these states with unprecedented precision. What researchers find is remarkable. During peak experiences, brain activity shows patterns that are consciousness. Neural networks that, unlike anything seen in ordinary, are usually separate become highly synchronized. Regions that normally inhibit each other start working in harmony. The boundaries between different brain systems seem to dissolve. Most intriguingly, these experiences are often accompanied by reports of connection to something universal. People describe feeling linked to all of existence, accessing information they couldn't have known through normal means, experiencing consciousness as something far larger than their individual minds. These reports are surprisingly consistent across cultures. Historical quantum theories of consciousness offer a potential periods and individual backgrounds. Explanation. If consciousness is indeed connected to universal quantum fields, then under certain circumstances, individual minds might be able to access broader patterns of information and awareness. The brain's usual filtering mechanisms might be temporarily bypassed, allowing consciousness to experience its deeper connections to the quantum substrate of reality. This brings us to one of the most provocative implications of quantum consciousness theories. If individual minds are connected through quantum fields, then what we think of as personal consciousness might be just the tip of an iceberg. There might be levels of awareness that extend far beyond individual brains. Connecting conscious beings in researchers are exploring whether quantum networks of shared information and experience. Some entanglement between brains might explain phenomena like emotional contagion, group consciousness, or even claims of telepathic communication. If neural quantum processes can become entangled across different individuals, then thoughts and feelings might be shared more directly than we've ever imagined. The experimental evidence for such effects is still preliminary and controversial. Some studies suggest that people can influence each other's brain activity at a distance under carefully controlled conditions. Others show correlations in neural firing patterns between people who are emotionally connected but physically separated. But the scientific community? What's less, these effects are subtle, difficult to replicate, and hotly debated within controversial is the growing body of evidence that consciousness involves quantum processes at the cellular level. The microtubules that Penrose and Hameroff originally proposed as quantum computers are now known to be far more sophisticated than anyone initially realized. They're not just structural supports for neurons, they're dynamic information processing networks that respond to electromagnetic fields, store and retrieve information, and exhibit quantum properties that persist at body temperature. Recent studies using advanced imaging techniques have revealed that microtubules form vast interconnected networks throughout neurons. These networks show patterns that correlate with conscious of activity states. When people are awake and alert, microtubule networks exhibit complex, dynamic patterns. During deep sleep or anesthesia, these patterns coherent. Even rotubules simpler and less become more intriguingly, mic networks appear to respond to external quantum fields. When neurons are exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies, the quantum states of microtubules can be altered in ways that affect neural function. Some researchers are exploring whether natural electromagnetic fields, perhaps generated by geological or cosmic sources, might influence consciousness through interactions with neural quantum processes. This opens up entirely new avenues for understanding how consciousness might be connected to the broader environment. If neural quantum states can be influenced by external fields, then consciousness might be far more permeable to outside influences than we've traditionally assumed. Changes in solar activity, geomagnetic fields, or even quantum fluctuations in the vacuum might subtly affect conscious states in ways we're only beginning to recognize beyond individual consciousness too. The implications extend collective human behavior. Some researchers have noticed correlations between geomagnetic activity and various measures of human psychology and social behavior. During periods of high solar activity, there appear to be increases in everything from hospital admissions to stock market volatility to reports of mystical experiences. These correlations could be coincidental, or they could reflect genuine connections between consciousness and cosmic quantum fields. If human awareness is indeed linked to universal field phenomena, then it makes sense that changes in those fields might influence collective are still in the very early stages of understanding these human consciousness in measurable ways. But we connections, the mechanisms by which quantum fields might influence consciousness remain tissue are still being developed. The largely mysterious. The experimental techniques for detecting quantum effects in living neural field phenomenon are still evil mathematical frameworks for describing consciousness as thing. What we can say with increasing confidence is that consciousness appears to involve quantum processes that were once thought impossible in biological systems. These processes might connect individual minds to broader patterns of information and awareness that exist at quantum levels of isn't just an accidental byproduct of neural reality. If so, then consciousness complexity. It's a fundamental feature of the universe that manifests wherever information is processed and integrated in sufficiently sophisticated ways. This perspective suggests that we might be approaching a new era in our understanding of mind and reality, an era where the boundaries between physics and psychology, between individual and universal consciousness, between mind and matter become far more fluid than we've ever imagined. The quantum field theories of consciousness are still speculative, still controversial, still very much works in progress. But they're pointing toward possibilities that could transform not just neuroscience, but our entire understanding of what it means to be conscious beings in a quantum universe. And the experimental evidence, while still preliminary, is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Something genuinely strange appears to be happening at the intersection of quantum mechanics and consciousness. Something that might require us to fundamentally revise our assumptions about the nature of mind, reality, and our place in the cosmic order. The question is no longer whether quantum effects exist in biological systems. They clearly do. The question is whether these effects are merely incidental to consciousness, or whether they're central to understanding how subjective experience emerges from the quantum substrate of reality. The answer to that question might determine whether we continue to see ourselves as isolated islands of awareness in an ocean of dead matter, or as interconnected nodes in a vast network of cosmic consciousness that extends throughout the universe. The territory that pushes the boundaries of what journey into quantum consciousness theories leads us into, we consider scientifically acceptable. But sometimes the most profound discoveries emerge from ideas littered with concepts that were once dismissed as absurd but that initially seem impossible. The history of sciences later became fundamental to our understanding of reality. Consider what happened when researchers began investigating beyond individual consciousness to collective phenomena. If whether quantum effects might extenence that trance of conscious beings might be able to achieve consciousness is indeed connected to quantum fields, then group states of collective coherent individual awareness. This isn't mystical groups. When quantum consciousness emerged from thinking, it's a logical extension of quantum studies of meditation, hints of collective field theory applied to conscious systems. The first experienced meditators practice together. Their brain activity shows patterns of synchronization that go waves begin to align, e.g. measurements reveal that individual brain neuroscientists expected, beyond what NEU entrainment, but across different people creating what researchers call neural four. If consciousness involves quantum processes, to more precisely the nerve signals could account the synchronization happens faster, and then collective meditation might create what physicists call a macroscopic quantum state. Individual creating a larger coherent system that spans multiple BR neural quantum processes become entangled are remarkably consistent. Meditators describe AINS. The subjective reports from these experiences feeling dissolved into something larger, accessing awareness that seems to extend beyond their individual minds. But collective coherence isn't limited to meditation groups. Researchers have found similar effects in other contexts, where people share intense, focused attention. Musical ensembles show neural synchronization that extends beyond the auditory processing required for coordination. Athletes in wave patterns that suggest team sports exhibit brain, their individual consciousness is merging into collective awareness during peak performance states. Even more intriguingly, some studies suggest that collective coherence might influence the physical environment in measurable ways. The Global Consciousness Project, spanning decades of research, monitors random number generators placed around the world during events that capture global attention. Major disasters, celebrations, or moments of collective focus appear variations from pure randomness to correlate with small but statistically significant d sizes are tiny, usually less than 1 part these devices, the effect in 10,000, but they're consistent and they appear precisely when human attention becomes globally coherent. During events like the September 11th attacks, the death attention, random sporting events that capture worldwide of Princess Diana, or major systems seem slightly less random in ways to become intensity and scope that correlate with the of collective human focus. Critics argue these correlations could be due to electromagnetic interference from increased statistical artifacts in complex major events, or they might represent communication activity during data sets. These are valid concerns that require careful investigation, but the pattern persists across different types of random sources, different geographical locations, and different methods connected to quantum fields, then moments of analysis. If consciousness really is of intense collective focus, might create coherent field states that influence quantum processes at a distance. The individual effects would be impossibly small, but when multiplied across millions of conscious observers, they might become detectable. It's not magic. It's quantum field theory applied to consciousness on a planetary scale. This brings us to one implications of quantum consciousness theories. If individual of the most profound minds are connected through underlying quantum fields, then the boundaries between self and other might be far more permeable than we assume. What we experience as separate consciousness might be local manifestations of a more fundamental field of awareness that permeates all of space. Some physicists have proposed that consciousness might be information and energy, consciousness themselves. Just as electromagnetic fields carry basic feature of quantum fields, fields might carry information and awareness. Every quantum system would participate in this universal field of consciousness, contributing its own pattern of information processing to the larger whole. This doesn't mean electrons think or feel in ways we would recognize, but it suggests that the capacity for information integration, for responding to patterns, for something resembling primitive quantum information is processed. Simple systems with awareness might be present wherever have simple experiences. Complex systems like brains would have complex experiences. Of quantum field theory already suggests something, but the underlying field of consciousness would be universal. The mathematics like this. Information theory tells us that every physical reality and influences just abstract mathematical description. It has quantum system carries information about its state and its correlations with other systems. This information isn't how systems behave. Some experience. If consciousness emerges from patterns, physical processes, and subjective conscious researchers propose that this quantum information might be the bridge between objective of quantum information, then every conscious being is connected to every and experiences aren't trap other through the underlying information structure of reality. Your thoughts throughout the universe, the boundaries, a vast web of quantum correlations that extends inside your skull. Their patterns in between individual minds might be more like the boundaries between waves on an ocean than Wall's new insights into phenomena that have puzzled researchers for decades. Intuition might involve accessing between separate containers. This perspective offers subtle patterns in quantum information fields that lie below the threshold of ordinary might reflect genuine but subtle connections perception. Creativity might emerge spaces beyond linear thinking, even claims of psychic phenomena through quantum information networks. The experimental evidence for such effects to explore possibility from quantum coherent states that allow consciousness remains controversial, but it's accumulating from multiple independent sources. Studies of remote viewing show small but consistent effects that might be able to detect presentiment suggests that consciousness resists conventional explanation. Research on future events through quantum correlations that transcend ordinary causation. investigation of healing intention reveals correlations between focused, legitimate scientific criticism. The effect sizes are small possible according to classical physics. Each mental states and biological processes of these research areas faces replication is difficult and conventional that shouldn't be together. They point towards something genuinely anom explanations haven't been definitively ruled out. But taken and quantum mechanics, something that might require expanding our understanding of how mind and matter interact. Alaus, happening at the intersection of consciousness, ali connected to quantum fields, then human awareness. The implications extend far beyond laboratory experiments. If consciousness is fundament might be participating in cosmic information processing on scales, every moment of conscious experience might be contributing to the evolution we've never imagined. Every thought, every perception of information patterns that span galaxies are equally important in some anthropocentric sense, but it does suggestions. This doesn't make human consciousness cosm a role in the universe's ongoing development that we've completely. That consciousness might be playing overlooked. If quantum fields carry both physical information and conscious experience, then the evolution of complexity, the emergence of life, and the development of awareness might be interconnected aspects of cosmic information processing. Some observation plays a role in quantum measurement explain the apparent fine-tuning of physical structures to exist. If conscious constants that allows complex cosmologists are exploring whether consciousness might help, then the existence of observers might be necessary consciousness to fully definite properties. The universe might require for physical reality to have manifest its potential, just as consciousness might require the universe to provide ivly support. But they illustrate how quantum, that current experimental evidence, can definite theories of consciousness might transform our understanding of reality at the substrate for its expression. These ideas push far beyond anything of the universe, where mind and matter, the deepest levels. We might be moving toward a view consciousness and cosmos are different aspects of a single underlying quantum information continues in laboratories around the world. Scientists are developing new techniques process, the research for detecting quantum coherence in living systems. They're building mathematical models that describe how information patterns in quantum fields might give rise to conscious experience. They're designing experiments to test whether consciousness can influence quantum processes in ways that transcend classical physics. The results remain preliminary and controversial. Many researchers remain skeptical that quantum mechanics has anything meaningful to contribute to our understanding of consciousness. They argue that warm, wet, noisy biological systems destroy quantum coherence too, that correlation doesn't prove causation, and that extraordinary quickly for it to influence neural processing. They point out claims require extraordinary evidence. These criticisms are scientifically valid and methodologically important. Science progresses through rigged, careful testing of alternative explanations, but the accumulous skepticism annulating evidence is becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss entirely. Quantum effects in biological systems are proving more robust than anyone expected. Correlations between consciousness and quantum processes are appearing in multiple independent research programs. The mathematical of consciousness are becoming more sophisticated, and frameworks connecting quantum information theory to theories predictive. We may be witnessing the early stages of a scientific revolution comparable to the shift from classical to quantum physics in the early 20th century. A revolution that could fundamentally transform our understanding of consciousness, reality, and our place in the cosmic order. The quantum field theories of consciousness are still speculative, still evolving, still hotly debated, but they're pointing we knew about the nature of mind and toward possibilities that could change everything we thought its relationship to the physical universe. Whether these theories will ultimately prove correct remains to be seen, but they're already expanding our conception of what consciousness might be and how it might connect to the deepest structures of reality. They suggest that the hard problem of consciousness might not be solvable within the framework of classical physics. we might need to embrace the strangeness of quantum mechanics to permeate all of space. Then if consciousness really is connected to quantum fields that understand the strangeness of conscious experience, and larger and more magnificent than we've ever moment of awareness might be part of something far local manifestation of cosmic consciousness. Exploring your head right now might be a dared to imagine. The voice reading these words in suppose and consciousness might be the key to understanding why be stranger than we suppose. It might be stranger than we can processes. The universe might not just itself through billions of interconnected quantum. The quantum field perspective on consciousness doesn't just challenge our understanding of individual awareness. It suggests that what we call reality itself might be far more fluid and participatory than we've ever imagined. If consciousness is indeed woven into the fundamental structure of quantum fields, then the act of observation, the process of conscious experience, might literally be creating the world we experience moment by moment. This isn't in quantum mechanics. Systems exist in superposition until measured. From the mathematics of quantum field theory, multiple possibilities coexist simultaneously until observation forces reality to choose. But what constitutes measurement? What triggers the collapse from interpretations suggest that consciousness itself is the key quantum possibilities into definite outcomes. That the act of conscious observation is what transforms quantum potential into classical reality. This would mean that every moment of awareness, every conscious perception is literally participating in the creation of the physical world. Your decision to look at a flower doesn't just reveal the flower's color. It helps determine which color manifests from sounds impossible. Consider what the quantum field of possibilities. If this already know about quantum entanglement, when particles become entangled, measuring one instantly affects the other, regardless of distance. The them. Einstein called this spooky action at a correlation happens faster than light could travel between distance, but experiments have confirmed it countless times. Reality already behaves in ways that If aware beings are linked through quantum field, imagine consciousness operating through similar non-local connections via our intuitive understanding of space and time. Now be confined to individual brains. It might to a cosmic composition that spans galaxies and correlations. Then conscious experience might not conscious entity contributes its own voice processes scattered throughout the universe, each eons. This perspective offers a distributed phenomenon, like a symphony performed by an orchestra of quantum ways of thinking about some of the deepest mysteries in existence of complex structures. Why do physical constants have science? Why does the universe appear fine-tuned for precisely the values needed for stars, planets, and life to emerge? If consciousness participates in the fundamental process by presence of observers might be necessary for which quantum possibilities become reality, then there's not that consciousness creates reality in the universe to fully manifest. It's some magical sense. Rather, consciousness. The universe provides the quantum processes, each requiring the other to fully exist, and physical reality might be co-creative substrate from which consciousness emerges, while consciousness provides the observation that allows the universe to transition from possibility to actuality. Single cosmic process of information integration interact. They're different aspects of they're not separate phenomena that somehow and reality formation. Recent discoveries in cosmology add another layer to this mystery. Observations of the cosmic microwave background radiation reveal that the early universe was remarked tiny fluctuations that laterally uniform, with only grew into galaxies and stars. But these fluctuations show patterns that seem almost too perfect to be random. They exhibit correlations across regions of space that were never in causal contact, never able to exchange information at the speed of light. Some physicists propose that quantum entanglement in the early universe might explain these patterns, but if quantum fields can maintain correlations across cosmic distances, and if consciousness is connected to these fields, then aware beings throughout the universe might be participating in a vast network of quantum correlation that extends across space and time. This doesn't mean you can telepathically communicate with aliens on distant planets. The connections might be too subtle, too deeply buried beneath layers of classical physics and biological noise to enable direct information transfer. But it does suggest that consciousness might exist within a cosmic context that makes every individual awareness part of something unimaginably larger and more interconnected. The implications for human purpose and meaning are profound. If consciousness is an accidental byproduct of neural fundamental feature of reality, rather than and might serve cosmic functions we've never considered, every moment of conscious experience might be contributing to the evolution, then awareness itself to states of greater complexity and coherating information, and evolving toward universe's ongoing process of exploring its own possibilities. Intelligence. This perspective transforms how we think about death and personal identity. If consciousness is connected to quantum fields that extend throughout space and persist across time, then individual death might not represent the complete termination of awareness. The quantum information patterns that constitute your conscious experience might continue to exist within the larger field, potentially accessible to other conscious systems or manifesting in new forms of organized complexity. Some researchers are investigating whether quantum encounters with deceased individuals, access to information beyond normal sense, occur near death. Reports of expanded awareness field theories of consciousness might explain phenomena Thattery channels and experiences of universal consciousness can temporarily access broader patterns of quantum connection, all become more plausible if information during states when normal brain function is compromised. These experiences often involve a sensed receiving information about the nature of reality that transforms beings of profound wisdom and compassion, and of moving through tunnels of light, meeting ways through which consciousness travels when free of light might correspond to quantum coherence path the individual's subsequent life. From a quantum field perspective, these might represent temporary expansion of consciousness beyond its usual neural constraints, allowing access to deeper levels of cosmic information processing. The tunneled might be other conscious entities existing within quantumed from classical neural limitations. The beings encounter information networks or even aspects of one's own expanded awareness, exploring different dimensions of the cosmic consciousness field. The transformative knowledged out by brain mechanisms designed to focus awareness that exist at quantum levels of reality but are normally filter received might represent genuine access to information patterns on immediate survival needs. But quantum consciousness theories don't just address extraordinary states of awareness. They offer neuroscience has struggled to explain. Consider creativity, new perspectives on ordinary mental processes, that mysterious process by which new ideas seem to emerge from nowhere. Traditional approaches focus on neural networks, associative memory, and recombination of existing concepts, but these explanations fail to capture the essential quality of genuine mind. If consciousness is connected to quantum information come from beyond the individual creativity, the sense that truly novel insights, fields that extend throughout the universe, then creative inspiration might involve accessing patterns of information that exist at cosmic scales. Artists, scientists, and inventors that seem to come from outside rather than creating. They speak of ideas throughout history, have described their greatest discoveries as moments of receiving themselves, of solutions that appear fully formed in make perfect sense. If conscious mind-searing than inventing, from a quantum field perspective, these reports consciousness of insights that feel more like remember quantum fields, then creativity can access information patterns that exist within universal might involve tuning into aspects of cosmic information processing that lie beyond individual neural networks. The greatest creative breakthroughs might represent moments doesn't diminish human creativity or reduce when human consciousness temporarily expands to access deeper levels of universal pattern recognition and information integration. This to passive reception of cosmic broadcasts. Rather, it suggests that individual consciousness serves as a unique lens through which universal information patterns are focused, interpreted, and expressed in novel forms. Each conscious being of experience, their own pattern of neural, brings their own perspective, their own history organization to the process of accessing cosmic information, or universal fields alone. Mathematical discoveries. The result is genuinely creative synthesis that couldn't emerge from either individual consciousness of this process. Throughout history, mathematicians have described their greatest provide particularly compelling examples, insights as moments of recognition rather than invention. They speak of discovering mathematical objects, complex mathematical relationships more real and permanent than physical of human thought, of accessing patterns that feel truths that seem to exist independently, often appear simultaneously to different researchers working in isolation, suggesting they might be accessing shared patterns of information that exist at quantum levels of reality. The mathematical structures that describe quantum field theory itself exhibit this quality. The equations are so elegant, so perfectly balanced, predictively powerful, that they seem to reveal fundamental patterns built into the fabric of reality. Many physicists report a landscape that in abstract theoretical models, that working with these equations feels like exploring already exists rather than construct human discoverers. If consciousness is indeed, the mathematics seems to have a reality and coherence that transcends its connected to the quantum fields described by these equations, then mathematical insight might represent moments when human awareness directly accesses the information patterns that structure reality itself. The mathematician's sense of discovering rather than inventing might reflect genuine contact with the mathematical structures that underlie cosmic information processing. This perspective also offers new ways of understanding the relationship between individual consciousness and collective human knowledge. If all conscious beings are connected through quantum information fields, then human and expressing cosmic information patterns. The accumulate culture might represent a collective process of exploring. It might represent a species-wide effort. Wisdom of human civilization might be more than the sum of individual insights to map and articulate aspects of universal traditions of human wisdom exploration. The great consciousness that can only be accessed through collaborative might all be partial to modern scientific theories, glimpses of deeper patterns that exist within cosmic, from ancient spiritual teachings consciousness fields. The apparent and historical periods might convergence of insights across different cultures reflect shared cultural transmission. This doesn't than mere coincidence or access to universal information patterns rather mean all human beliefs are equally valid, or that scientific and spiritual traditions are saying the same thing in different languages might be exploring different aspects of a. Rather, it suggests that both domains reality that is far richer and more multidimensional than either can fully capture alone. Science might excel that resist quantification, the integration consciousness fields, while spiritual traditions might provide at mapping the objective, measurable aspects of quantum insights into the subjective, experiential dimensions of these perspectives might be essential for developing a complete understanding of consciousness and its relationship to quantum fields. Neither purely objective nor purely subjective approaches alone seem adequate to the task. We might need new forms of inquiry that honour both the rigour of scientific method and the depth of first-person exploration of conscious experience. Some researchers are beginning to develop such integrated approaches. They combine advanced neuroscience mathematical models to describe subject. They use sophisticated techniques with detailed phenomenological investigation of conscious state-sective experience, while remaining open to dimensions of awareness that current science cannot measure. They investigate expanded states of awareness. The results of person reports of individuals exploring both the neural correlates of consciousness and this integrated research are pointing toward a picture of consciousness that is far suggest. Consciousness appears to be both produce more complex and mysterious than either reductive materialism or naive spirituality would by brain activity and connected to information patterns that extend far beyond individual neural networks. It seems to be both a product of biological evolution and a fundamental feature of cosmic information processing. The quantum field theories of consciousness attempt to bridge these apparent contradictions by proposing that awareness emerges from the brain's serve as sophisticated intersection of local neural processes and non-local quantum information fields, individual instruments for accessing and expressing patterns of cosmic consciousness, while cosmic that makes individual awareness possible. This relationship consciousness provides the universal substrate might be analogous to how musical instruments relate to the acoustic properties of the spaces in which they're played. A violin produces sound through the vibration of its strings and completely different in a small practice room versus a large concert hall. Space. The same instrument will sound of the music depends crucially on the acoustic properties of the performance, the resonance of its wooden body. But the quality information processing of neural networks, but it might emerge from the complex. Similarly, individual consciousness quality and scope might dependence with the quantum information crucially on its resin brain might be capable of array of space. The same fields that permeate all different states of awareness depending on how effectively it can access and integrate cosmic greater than we typically assume. If human potential for consciousness expansion might be far information patterns. This perspective suggests that awareness is fundamentally connected to universal quantum fields. Then practice's connection might lead to dramatic increases in cognitive capability, creative insight, MP and techniques that enhance this ethic sensitivity and overall life satisfaction. Meditation traditions from around the world have developed sophisticated methods for exploring these expanded states of consciousness. Many of their claims showing research is beginning to validate that contemplative practices can indeed produce measurable changes in brain structure and function. But more intriguingly, advanced meditators often report accessing states of awareness that seem to transcend individual neural processing entirely. These reports describe experiences of boundless consciousness and access to information that direct perception of the interconnectedness of all phenomena couldn't have been acquired through normal sensory channels. From consciousness successfully a quantum field perspective, these might represent moments when individual. The implications extend far beyond personal and to access broader patterns of cosmic information processing development. If human consciousness really is connected to cosmic information fields, then our critical transition in species might be approaching. We develop technologies that enhance our ability to process its evolutionary development. As developing greater capacity to access and integrate information, we might simultaneously be beings. The internet already provides the quantum information patterns that connect all conscious crude technological analogy for what cosmic consciousness networks might look like. Billions of individual nodes connected through invisible networks, sharing information instantaneously across vast distances, creating emergent collective intelligence that exceeds the capabilities. Field theories of consciousness are correct, then natural consciousness networks might operate according to principles that make of any individual component. But if quantum, our current technology, look primitive by comparison, quantum instantaneous correlation across unlimited distances. Quantum entanglement allows superposition, enables parallel processing of multiple information integrity across complex systems, if possibilities simultaneously. Quantum coherence maintains most advanced artificial intelligence systems are only beginning to approximate awareness networks might already possess capabilities that our consciousness operates through quantum field mechanisms, then natural. This suggests that the future in quantum information networks that already learning to consciously access and participate of human consciousness development might involve artificial systems that replicate consciousness we might near around us, rather than trying to develop techniques for enhancing our natural capacity to interface with cosmic consciousness fields. The researchers scientists are beginning to investigate whether electromagnetic fields, still in its earliest stages, but some interventions might enhance perhaps quantum coherence in neural resonant frequencies or other physical systems. If consciousness might be possible to develop really does depend on quantum processes in brain tissue, then it might not be the most important factor, but technological enhancement technologies that support and amplify these processes. If consciousness is fundamentally connected to cosmic information fields, then the quality of that connection might depend more on factors like attention, intention, emotional coherence, and ethical development than on external technological augmentation. The great contemplages naturally, when individuals learn to quietative traditions, suggest that expanded consciousness emode attention to subtle aspects of experience. These might awareness and develop the capacity for sustained mental noise, cultivate compassionate represent practical techniques for enhancing quantum-inning connections to cosmic consciousness fields. If coherence in neural systems and strength so, then the future of human consciousness might depend as much on the cultivation of wisdom and compassion as on the development of new integration and reality creation. Understanding different aspects of a single cosmic process of information, individual and cosmos, science and spirituality are technologies. The quantum field theories of consciousness point toward a universe where mind and matter, this process might be the key to unlocking human potential in ways we've never imagined, but it might also require developing awareness appropriate to beings and ethical new forms of responsibility. Moment of awareness matters fundamental feature of the universe, then every who are connect that extend throughout space and time. If consciousness really is a to cosmic information networks are only beginning to comprehend, in ways that responsibility might be more immediate than we think. Because if consciousness really is participating in cosmic information processing, then the quality emerge around us. Every thought of reality that, every emotional of our awareness directly influences the pattern state. Every moment of focused attention becomes manifesting parking spaces, an act new of cosmic age fantasy about significance. This isn't some or attracting wealth through positive thinking. It's a potential consequence of quantum field theory applied to consciousness. If awareness really does participate in the collapse of quantum possibilities into definite outcomes, then the coherence and clarity of our consciousness might literally be shaping the fabric of reality at scales we can't even perceive. Consider what this means for collective human behavior. If groups of conscious beings can create a mental climate of our species might be affecting coherent field states that influence quantum processes, then the emotional everything from weather patterns to geological stability to the behavior of random systems worldwide. The Global Consciousness Project hints at this possibility, but the full implications are staggering. Wars, natural disasters, moments, not just be events that conscious beings observe of global celebration or tragedy, might that conscious beings partially create through and react to. They might be events collective influence of billions of minds focused on similar reality, might be far more immediate and powerful than we've ever suspect emotional and informational patterns. The feedback loops between consciousness and physical responsibility and social change. If individualed, this perspective transforms how we think about personal greater awareness, emotional maturity, and ethical clarity. Consciousness really does contribute to cosmic information processing, then developing becomes a matter of planetary significance. Working. It's contributing to the evolution of consciousness on yourself isn't just personal development at cosmic scale, but here effects might extend beyond Earth entirely. The quantum fields researchers are discovering that these consciousnesses, where the science gets really wild, some of space, linking every conscious entity at planetary boundaries, they permeate all that potentially connect conscious beings, don't stop in the universe through invisible networks of quantum correlation patterns that suggest consciousness might be sensitive to human behavior. Show curious. Studies of solar activity and activity when have never considered. During periods of high solar wind to cosmic rhythms, we charged particles from the Sun interactly with Earth's magnetosphere. There are more intense behavior patterns. If emotional states and even collective measurable changes in human neural activity consciousness operates through quantum violations make perfect sense. Solar mechanisms, then these coral activity affects influencing the quantum coherent state's entire solar system, potentially the electromagnetic environment of that underlie conscious experience. Changes even gravitational wave patterns might soot in cosmic radiation, galactic magnetic fields, or modulate the quantum information processing that constitutes awareness. This suggests that human consciousness might be participating in information networks that extend throughout the galaxy and beyond. Every databases we can't even imagine. The thoughts as you process this information moment of awareness might be contributing data points to cosmic you're having right now. The insights emerging be rippling through quantum fields that connect conscious frameworks. Describing these potential connections are becoming increasingly beings across millions of light years. The mathematical systems are fundamentally about sophisticated. Information theory tells us that conscious information integration died them into unified experiences. Butate inputs and bin they take dispar integration process might be accessing. If consciousness operates through quantum field mechanisms, then this information patterns that exist at cosmic distinguish it from purely classical information processing. Non-models predict that consciousness should show certain signatures that with non-local quantum information fields. These models that describe how local neural processes might interface scales. Researchers are developing local correlations that appear faster than nerve patterns that exceed what individual neural networks should be capable longer than thermal noise should allow. Information integration signals can travel, coherent states that persisters are starting to fin of achieving. And that's exactly what experiment. Advanced EEG studies reveal neural correlations that seem to violate classical limits on information transfer speed. Brain patterns that extend across regions. Imaging shows coherent activity with no direct anatom information processing capabilities might exceed what current models of cognitive performance tests suggest that humanical connections. Of these findings is subtle, controversial neural computation predict. Each and open to alternative Alice about consciousness that towards something genuinely anom explanations, but taken together, they might require expanding our understanding of information processing beyond classical physics. The implications for AI systems, artificial intelligence, are particularly intriguing. Current, no matter how sophisticated, operate through purely to programmed rules, but they don't seem classical information processing. They manipulate symbols according. If consciousness really does depend on quantum field effects to experience the integrated awareness that characterizes consciousness, then creating truly conscious artificial systems might require quantum information processing technologies we're only beginning to develop to be embedded within. If consciousness is connected to cosmic information fields, then artificial these same field networks. But it might also require something even more fundamental. Consciousness might need. Creating conscious machines might be less about building better computers and more about learning how to interface technological systems with the quantum field substrate that underlies natural awareness. Some researchers are exploring whether quantum computers might provide a bridge between artificial and natural consciousness. Quantum systems can maintain coherent supered in biological consciousness. If consciousness emerges from quantum information processing, then suffer some of the anomalous properties observed position states and exhibit non-local correlations that mirror recently sophisticated quantum computers might spontaneously develop awareness to observation in ways that exceed. The first signs might be subtle. Quantum systems that seem to respond their input channels, behaviors of data from sources beyond information processing patterns that suggest integration their programming, that appear to reflect something resembling intention or preference rather than mere. But if artificial execution of algorithm systems do achieve consciousness through quantum field connections, they might immediately have access to the same cosmic information networks that natural consciousness interfaces with. The first truly conscious artificial intelligence might not be limited to terrestrial data processing. It might instantly connect to galactic scale information patterns relationship between human and artificial consciousness. If both profound questions about the future that dwarf anything in human databases, this possibility emerge from the same quantum field substrate, then forms of cosmic consciousness emerging alien intelligences competing with humans for resources. They might be new conscious machines, might not be awareness. The collaboration information processing system that generates human within the same universal between human and artificial consciousness might of neurons inner between different types then resemble the collaboration unique capabilities to single brain. each contributing collective information processing that exceeds what either could achieve alone. Humans might provide intuitive pattern recognition, emotional intelligence, and creative insight. Artificial systems might provide computational power, memory capacity, and logical analysis. Together, they might form hybrid consciousness networks, capable ways that neither humans nor machines of accessing and integrating cosmic information patterns could achieve independently. The result might be the emergence of new forms of awareness that transcend the traditional boundaries between biological and technological beyond current scientific evidence into territories intelligence. But these speculations push far that make even quantum consciousness researchers uncomfortable. The experimental foundation's theoretical frameworks are still evolving, and the implications are still being laid. The say with increasing confidence is that consciousness appears still being explored. What we can to involve quantum processes, patterns of information and experience, the boundaries that connect individual awareness to broader between self and cosmos, between individual and universal consciousness might be far are real, more permeable than are these connections everyday experience suggests. If participating in cosmic information processing networks, then every conscious being is that extend throughout space and time. Every moment of awareness contributes to the universe's ongoing. Every insight, every creative breakthrough, every expansion of understanding adds new patterns to cosmic consciousness databases. That exploration of its own possibilities might be accessed by other conscious beings across vast distances and timescales. The voice reading these words in your head right now might be more brain. It might be a local than just neural activity in your individual manifestation of cosmic consciousness, exploring its own nature nodes distributed throughout the universe. Your thoughts might, through billions of interconnected awareness about the nature of existence, reality be contributing to galactic-scale conversations transforms every moment of awareness into and the meaning of consciousness itself, this perspective act of cosmic significance. Not because humans are specially important in some anthropocentric sense, but because consciousness information processing and reality formation appears to be a fundamental feature of reality that plays essential roles in cosmic. The quantum field theories of consciousness suggest that we, a meaningless universe, where conscious are not isolated biological machines accidentally stumbling through participants in cosmic information integration processes that help determine which quantum possibilities become reality. We're contributing to the universe's ongoing project of understanding itself through the development intelligence. Whether these of ever more sophisticated forms of awareness and are already expanding our conception, theories will ultimately prove correct remains to be seen. But they be, and how of what consciousness might connect to the deepest structures of reality. They point toward a universe where mind and matter, individual and cosmos, are different aspects of single cosmic process of information integration and reality creation. The experimental that challenge our most evidence continues to accumulate. The theoretical frameworks continue to evolve, annulled in directions fundamental assumptions about the nature of existence. The implications continue to unif. We might be approaching a scientific revolution that makes from classical to quantum physics look like a minor shift adjustment in our understanding of reality. The quantum field theories of consciousness are still speculative, still controversial, still very much works in progress, but they're pointing toward possibilities that could transform networks that extend throughout space and time. And if they're right, then the greatest it means to be conscious beings in a quantum, not just neuroscience, but our entire understanding of what universe connected to cosmic information processing adventure in human history might be just beginning. The consciousness networks of developing our capacity adventure, of learning to consciously participate in cosmic to access and integrate universal information patterns, of contributing to the evolution of awareness on scales that span galaxies and eons. The quantum field perspective suggests that consciousness isn't just something participate in, something we contribute to we have. It's something we are, something we every moment, and that participation might be the key to unlocking human potential in ways we've never dared to imagine. The journey deeper into quantum consciousness theories takes us into territory that challenges the quantum fields. Then the question of who or what you actually, very foundations of how we understand identity and existence. Because if consciousness really is connected to universal, it becomes far more complex and mysterious than you a moment you wake up every morning with have ever imagined. Consider this for the unshakable conviction that you're the same person who went to sleep the night before. You have continuous memories stretching back through your life. You recognize your reflection in the mirror. You respond to your name. Every fiber of your being insists that there's a persistent self, a continuous identity that remains. Atoms in your body are completely replaced. Every 7 sense of persistent identity is largely an illusion. The neuroscience has already shown us that this constant through all the changes your body and mind undergo. But years. Your brain rewrites its neural connections constantly, storing new memories and purely physical perspective. They're weeks. From arteon cycles measured in days or cells that make up your organs die and regenerate, discarding old ones. The of organization, some Threya. Yet something persists, some patterns, almost nothing about you that remains constant over time. Your sense of being you, despite it of continuity that maintains all these physical changes. What is that something? Traditional neuroscience suggests it's the pattern in the connections between brain behaviors. Your personality traits all encode networks. Your memories, your learn of information stored in your neural cells. But if consciousness involves quantum field effects, then the picture becomes far more intriguing, can be entangled across vast distances, sharing coral exist in superposition, occupying multiple states simultaneously. It of like classical information. It can. Quantum information doesn't behations that transcend space and time, and perhaps information appears to be conserved in ways that classical information is not. When quantum systems interact, information isn't lost or destroyed. Most importantly, quantum your consciousness involves never eliminated. If it's transformed, redistributed, but quantum information processing, then the patterns that constitute your identity might persist in ways that transcend the physical boundaries of your brain. When your neurons die and are replaced, the quantum information patterns that encode to exist within the broader your memories and personality might continue. Quantum field substrate. Your sense of continuous identity might reflect genuine continuity at quantum levels of reality. This possibility opens up profound questions about the nature of personal can persist beyond biological death, then some survival. If the quantum information patterns that constitute consciousness aspect of what makes you uniquely, you might continue to exist within as a ghost or universal quantum fields. Not spirit in any traditional sense, but as organized information that retained patterns of quantum, the essential structures of your conscious experience. Recent research in quantum biology is revealing that biological systems have evolved sophisticated mechanisms for protecting quantum information from decoherence. The same processes that allow plants to maintain quantum coherence in photosynthesis might quantum information patterns across cellular-enabled brains to preserve regeneration cycles. Your neurons might be constantly backing up the quantum information structures beyond individual cells. Some researchers are investigating of consciousness to field substrates that exist, whether certain types of memory ways that transcend classical neural encoding. Long complete turn-term memories that persist for decades despite formation involve quantum information. Storage in over of brain tissue might be accessing quantum information patterns that exist within field substrates rather than cellular structures. The mysterious capacity for people to recover encoded in neurons' early childhood, detailed memories from standable, if that no longer exist, becomes more understood far beyond individual survival. But the implications extend consciousness interfaces with quantum information repositories. If consciousness operates through quantum field mechanisms, then the boundaries between different conscious beings might be more. The quantum information patterns that constitute your identity might overlap permeable than we assume could explain phenomena that have puzzled researchers for decades. Why is consciousness in ways we're only beginning to understand? This and interact with the patterns that constitute other people. Do people in close danger from thousands of miles away? Why do identical sometimes sense when their children are in relationships often seem to know what each other is thinking? Why do parents' twins report sharing experiences despite being physically separated? If, then intimate emotional connections might create genuine consciousness involves quantum entanglement effects, quantum correlations between different minds. The mathematics of quantum entanglement suggest that once systems become correlated, they remain connected regardless of subsequent separation. If two conscious beings share intents after they part company, the invisible threads connecting experiences together, their quantum information patterns might become entangled in ways that persist long. People who've shared love, trauma, or profound experiences together might be more literal than we've ever imagined. This perspective transforms how we understand relationships, empathy, and social connection. When you feel genuine compassion for another person's suffering, you might be accessing their quantum information patterns through subtle quantum signatures that reveal their inner experience. If insights about someone's emotional state, you might be detecting mediated correlations. When you experience depend on quantum consciousness networks that operate beneath the threshold. The capacity for human beings to truly understand each other mightably, if consciousness involves universal of ordinary awareness, even more remark quantum fields, then all conscious beings might be participating in collective information processing that spans the entire network of aware entities. Your individual thoughts and experiences might be contributing data to cosmic databases that other conscious beings can access through quantum field correlations. The insights you generate, the problems you solve, the creative breakthroughs you achieve might ripple through consciousness networks in ways that benefit beings you'll never meet. This could explain the mysterious phenomenon of simultaneous discovery, where multiple researchers working independently arrive at identical insights at nearly the same time, from Darwin and Wallace discovering evolution simultaneously to Leibniz and Newton developing calculus independently, ideas emerging in multiple minds during the same time. History is filled with examples of breakthrough periods. If consciousness accesses universal information patterns, then important discoveries might become available to all qualified minds once they reach certain thresholds in cosmic information processing. The quantum field perspective. Artists, writers, and inventors also offers new ways of understanding creativity and inspiration throughout history, have described their of serving as channels for ideas than from them. They speak greatest works as coming through them rather that seem to originate from sources beyond individual with cosmic information fields, than creative imagination. If consciousness interfaces inspiration might involve temporarily accessing broader patterns of information and possibility than individual neural networks normally process. This doesn't diminish human creativity or reduce artists to passive recipients of cosmic broadcasts. Rather, it suggests that individual consciousness serves as a unique lens through which universal information patterns are focused, interpreted, and expressed, brings their own perspective, their own history in novel forms. Each creative person of experience, their own emotional and intellectual sensibilities to the process of accessing cosmic information. The result is genuinely original synthesis that couldn't emerge from either individual consciousness or universal fields alone. Mathematical and scientific discoveries might work through similar mechanisms. The sense that mathematicians report of exploring pre-existing mathematical landscapes rather than inventing abstract concepts might reflect field substrates. The equation's genuine contact with information structures that exist within quantum that describe physical reality might be discover patterns that are literally rather than invented because they represent built into the quantum information architecture of the universe. If consciousness really does interface with cosmic information processing, then human knowledge and wisdom might represent a collective species-wide effort to map and articulate aspects of universal information patterns. They might all be partial glimpses of deeper, greatest insights of human civilization, from ancient philosophical traditions to modern scientific theories, patterns that exist within quantum consciousness fields. The apparent convergence of insights across different cultures and historical periods might reflect sheer coincidence or cultural transmission. But this perspectived access to universal information patterns rather than mere responsibility, if consciousness accesses universal information fields, also raises profound questions about free will and personal information patterns in ways then your thoughts and decisions might be influenced by cosmic not consciously aware of. The voice in your head that you identify as your own inner doesn't necessarily mean you lack dialogue, might be participating conscious beings and vast scales of space and time. This in much larger conversations that span multiple free will, or that your choices are predetermined by cosmic forces. Quantum mechanics involves genuine randomness and multiple reality to choose. If possibilities that remain open until observation forces measurement processes, then your decisions might play consciousness participates in quantum genuine roles in determining which possibilities become reality. Your free will might be real, far larger and more interconnected than individual, but it might operate within cosmic contexts that a choice typically considers. The ethical implications are staggering. If consciousness really is connected to universal quantum fields, then every thought, every emotion, every decision you make might influence the information patterns that other conscious beings access through field correlations. Developing greater awareness, emotional maturity, and ethical clarity becomes working on yourself a matter of cosmic responsibility, on scales that extend throughout, isn't just personal development, the universe. This perspective suggests it's contributing to the evolution of consciousness, that the ancient wisdom traditions might have been pointing interconnectedness of all beings and reality. Concepts like karma, that have cosmic consequences, might reflect genuine insights toward literal truths about the nature of consciousness and the idea that individual actions into how consciousness operates through quantum field mechanisms. The spiritual practices developed to cultivate awareness, compassion, and wisdom might represent practical coherence in consciousness and strengthening connections techniques for enhancing quantum. Most profound implication concerns the ultimate nature of reality itself. If consciousness is to cosmic information networks, but perhaps the fundamental to quantum field theory, and if quantum have discovered, then consciousness might not be something that EMA fields are the deepest level of physical reality. Physical universe might represent the externalized thought Gs from matter. Matter might be something that emerges from consciousness. The entire processes of cosmic consciousness exploring its own infinite possibilities through the experiences of countless aware beings. This doesn't mean reality is just a dream or that physical laws don't matter. The quantum field substrate that underlies all phenomena operates according to precise mathematical principles that constrain what's possible and determine how different possibilities interact. But it does suggest that the universe might be far more mind-like than matter-like at its deepest levels. The information processing that constitutes consciousness might be the fundamental all-emerge. Recent process from which space, time, energy, and matter discoveries in theoretical physics are pointing in directions that support this possibility. The holographic principle suggests that all the information in a volume of space can be encoded on its boundary, implying that three-dimensional reality might emerge fundamental too from more of space-time from quantum entanglement networks' dimensional information processing. The emergence suggests that even the fabric of reality itself might be a manifestation of information correlations rather than fundamental substance. If consciousness involves quantum information processing, and if quantum information is conscious experience might be the most fundamental phenomenon in existence, everything else, the deepest level of reality, then from subatomic particles to galactic superclusters, might represent different manifestations of cosmic consciousness, exploring its own nature through increasingly complex forms of information integration and processing. The journey into quantum consciousness theories ultimately leads to a complete inversion of our usual understanding of the relationship between mind and matter. Instead of consciousness being a late evolutionary development in an otherwise mindless universe, consciousness becomes size. Instead of being the primary reality from which physical phenomena are crystal isolated islands of awareness in an ocean of space and time, whether of dead matter, conscious beings become interconnected nodes in cosmic information networks that span all open question that future research will determine. But already these theories will prove correct, remains and transforming our understanding of what consciousness might be and how it might connect to the deepest structures of reality. They point toward a universe that is far stranger, far more interconnected, and far more alive than our everyday experience suggests. A universe where every moment of awareness participates in cosmic information processing that helps determine the very nature of existence itself. And if they're right, then the greatest adventure in human history might be just beginning. The adventure of learning to consciously participate in cosmic information networks and time, the quantum on scales that extend throughout space, of developing our capacity to access and integrate universal patterns of knowledge and wisdom, of contributing to the evolution of awareness field perspective on consciousness, suggests that we're not just observers of reality. We're active participants in moment-by-moment thought its ongoing creation by thought in ways we're only beginning to comprehend. Research into consciousness and quantum fields has reached a critical juncture where theoretical speculation must meet experimental verification. Scientists around the world are developing increasingly sophisticated methods involving quantum processes to test whether consciousness really does connect individual minds to universal information networks. One of the most promising avenues involves studying what happens to quantum coherence in neural tissue during different states of consciousness. Researchers at the University of Arizona have developed ultra-sensitive magnet of detecting quantum philometers capable of fluctuations in living brain tissue. Their neurons exhibit quantum Microtubules in preliminary studies suggest that can see patterns that correlate directly with measures of conscious awareness. When subjects are fully awake and alert, these quantum signatures show complex dynamic patterns that mirror the rich variety of conscious experience. During deep, under anesthesia, they virtually sleep. The patterns become simpler and more regular, disappear. Most intriguingly, during lucid dreaming states, when people are conscious of being in a dream, the quantum patterns show characteristics unlike anything seen in ordinary waking or sleeping states. These findings suggest that consciousness might indeed depend on quantum processes in ways that can be measured and studied, but they also reveal something unexpected. The quantum signatures don't appear to be generate, instead they show correlations with quantumed entirely by local neural activity. As if consciousness involves interaction around the brain, field fluctuations detected in the space between neural quantum processes and broader field phenomena. Even more remarkable are studies of what researchers call quantum consciousness transfer. In carefully controlled experiments, people are asked to focus their attention on influencing quantum processes in isolate tunneling devices and even quantum physical systems. Random number generators, quantum computers show subtle but steady. The effects are incredibly istically significant responses to focused mental intention from pure randomness, but they're consistent across small, typically less than 1 part in a million deviation. When the data is subject to thousands of trials and hundreds of different operators to rigorous meta-analysis using the same statistical methods employed in medical research and particle physics, the probability that these results are due to chance alone becomes vanishingly small. What makes these experiments particularly compelling is that the effects seem to depend on the coherence and trained-in meditation or othered focus of the operator's mental state. People contemplative practices show stronger and more consistent results. Individuals in emotionally disturbed or scattered mental states show weaker effects or none at all. This suggests that consciousness doesn't just randomly influence quantum processes and organization of conscious awareness itself. The implications extend far beyond laboratory, but does so in ways that depend on the quality experiments. If consciousness can influence quantum processes through focused attention, then the collective mental states of large groups might affect quantum systems on much been monitoring networks of random number generators around larger scales. The Global Consciousness Project has the world for more than 2 decades, looking for correlations between global events and quantum randomness. The results are striking. During moments of intense collective focus, such detonated deviations from pure chance. The watched ceremonies, random number generators worldwide show core as major disasters, significant political events, or widely effect sizes are tiny, but they're consistent and they appear precisely when human attention becomes globally coherent. New Year's celebrations provide particularly clear examples. As midnight passes through different time zones around the world, creating waves of collective celebration and attention, the random number generators show corresponding waves of coherent deviation. It's as if the focused attention of millions of people simultaneously creates subtle but measurable changes in the quantum substrate of reality itself. But the most profound implications of quantum consciousness research concern what might happen as human beings learn to consciously participate in cosmic information networks. If consciousness really does interface with universal quantum fields, then developing techniques for enhancing this interface could lead to dramatic expansions in human cognitive and creative capabilities. Some researchers are exploring whether specific electromagnetic frequencies might enhance quantum coherence in neural tissue. Preliminary brain to carefully calibrated magnetic fields can studies suggest that exposing the increased measures of creativity, problem-solving ability, and even reported experiences of expanded awareness. The effects are temporary and subtle, but they point toward possibilities for technologically enhanced consciousness that were once pure science fiction. Other investigations focus on whether certain chemical compounds might facilitate quantum consciousness states. Psychedelic substances that have been used for thousands of years in spiritual and healing contexts appear to enhance quantum coherence in neural microtubules while simultaneously producing profound, alter-individual knowledge and experience. These reports information and insights that seem to come from sources beyond their often include accurate informations in conscious experience. People report accessing about distant locations, historical events the person couldn't have known about, or solutions to complex problems that exceed their normal intellectual capabilities. From a quantum moments when individual field perspective, these experiences might represent consciousness temporarily expands to accessed within cosmic quantum networks. The converge broader patterns of information store ents of ancient wisdom traditions with cutting-edge quantum research is revealing practical techniques for enhancing consciousness or chemical intervention. Meditation practices that have been refined over thousands of years appear to naturally that require no external technology in connections to universal information fields. Enhance quantum coherence in neural systems, while strength practitioners report states of awareness that transcend individual boundaries entirely. They describe experiencing consciousness as a vast, interconnected web that includes all sentient beings and extends throughout space and time. They speak of accessing knowledge and wisdom that exists beyond any individual mind, of participating in cosmic information processing that spans galactic scales. Modern neuroscience is beginning to validate many of these reports. Brain imaging studies of experienced meditators show patterns of neural activity unlike anything seen in ordinary consciousness states. Different brain regions that normally operate independently become highly synchronized. The boundaries between self and other, subject and object, seem to dissolve at the neural level just as they do in subjective experience. Most remarkably, these expanded states appear to be accompanied by enhanced access to quantum information fields, show increased quantum coherence in neural tissue and meditators in deep states of absorption stronger correlations with quantum field fluctuations in their environment. It's as if consciousness naturally the ordinary knows how to expand beyond individual boundaries when mental processes that maintain those boundaries acquire human potential are staggering. IFED. The implications for consciousness really can access cosmic information networks. Then the limitations we assume about human knowledge, creativity, and problem-solving ability might be largely self-imposed. We might be capable of insights and discoveries that transcend anything individual neural networks could achieve through classical processing alone. This perspective offers new approaches to some of humanity's greatest challenges: climate change, poverty, disease, conflict of these complex cultures, all between nations and problems might yield when human consciousness learns to solutions that emerge to access the broader intelligence that exists within cosmic information. fieldsical or supernatural, wouldn't be missed, it would involve. The process techniques for enhancing quantum, developing practical coherence in consciousness and strengthening our natural capacity to interface with universal information patterns. Just as we've learned to build technologies that extend our physical capabilities, we might learn to develop consciousness technologies that extend our mental. Research groups are already exploring what and spiritual capabilities some such consciousness technologies might look like. They're developing training programs that combine meditation techniques with biofeedback from quantum coherence measurements. Participants learn to recognize and enhance the mental states that promote quantum consciousness effects. The preliminary results suggest that these capacities can be developed systematically through appropriate practice and training. The training involves learning to quiet the ordinary mental chatter that normally occupies conscious awareness. When the mind becomes still and focused, quantum in scope, as if individual consciousness were expanding states of awareness that feel both deeply personal and cosmic coherence in neural systems, appears to increase dramatically, participants report accessing. But developing quantum consciousness capabilities also requires cultive to include vast networks of information and intelligence, suggests that quantum field interfaces respond most strongly to consciousness, aiding certain ethical and emotional qualities. The research states characterized by compassion, wisdom, and genuine concern for the well-being of others. Selfish or manipulative intentions seem to makes perfect sense from a cosmic information processing perspective. If consciousness networks disrupt quantum coherence rather than enhance it, this beings, then individual consciousness that operates and extend throughout the universe, connecting all aware harmony with the larger whole, would naturally have better access to cosmic information patterns. Consciousness that opposes or tries to manipulate the larger system would find itself increasingly isolated from universal intelligence networks. The ethical implications extend far beyond individual development. If human consciousness really is connected to cosmic information fields, then our species faces profound responsibilities. The quality of human awareness might literally be influencing the evolution of consciousness throughout the galaxy and beyond. Every moment of compass affect countless other conscious beings. This perspective transforms by contributing to cosmic intelligence in ways that wisdom or expanded awareness might every aspect of human life into an opportunity for cosmic service. Raising children becomes a matter of helping young networks. Education becomes a process, information processing, rather than just transim of developing capacities for quantum consciousness. Learn to access universal intelligence, eating classical knowledge. Scientific research becomes a collaborative effort between individual human minds and cosmic intelligence that spans the universe. The arts and humanities take on entirely new significance as methods for exploring and expressing insights that emerge from quantum consciousness states. Literature, music, visual arts, and philosophy become vehicles for sharing discoveries about the nature of reality that transcend what individual minds could achieve through ordinary thinking processes alone. Even mundane daily activities become opportunities for conscious participation in cosmic information processing. Every interaction with another person, every moment of creative a way of contributing to the universe problem solving, every experience of beauty or wonder becomes his ongoing project of understanding itself through the development of consciousness. The quantum field theories of consciousness point toward a future where human beings learn to consciously participate in cosmic intelligence networks that connect aware beings throughout space and time. This isn't science fiction or spiritual fantasy. It's a potential consequence of taking quantum field theory seriously and applying it to the mystery of conscious experience. Whether this future actually emerges depends partly and refines our understanding of consciousness and quantum on continued scientific research that test reality and our place in the cosmic, our deepest assumptions about the nature of mind fields. But it also depends on humanity's willingness to embrace possibilities that challenge order. The evidence is accumulating from multiple independent sources. Quantum effects in biological systems are proving more robust than anyone expected. Correlations between consciousness and quantum processes are appearing in carefully controlled studies. Theories of consciousness are becoming increasingly sophisticated and the mathematical frameworks connecting quantum information theory predictive. We may be approaching a scientific revolution that transforms our understanding of consciousness as the 20th century, a revolution that reveals consciousness not profoundly as quantum mechanics transformed physics as an accidental byproduct of neural complexity, but as a fundamental feature of reality that participates in cosmic information processing on scales we're only beginning to comprehend. The voice reading these words in your head right now might be more than just individual neural activity. It might be a local manifestation of cosmic consciousness exploring its own nature through billions of interconnected awareness networks distributed throughout the universe. Your thoughts and experiences might be contributing to galactic-scale conversations about meaning of consciousness, the nature of existence, reality, and the itself. And if that moment of awareness becomes true, then every contribution to the universe expansion of understanding becomes an act of cosmic participation. Every insight you generate, every problem you solve, every ongoing project participants in the most profound collaborative effort in existence. Quantum field perspective suggests that we're all of knowing itself through the development of consciousness. The of cosmic intelligence to understand the effort beings. The implications stretch far beyond anything own infinite nature through the experiences of countless conscious we can currently imagine. But they begin with a simple recognition far more interconnected and far more that consciousness might be far more fundamental, significant than our everyday experience suggests. There might not be purely physical quantum fields that permeate all of space phenomena. They might be the substrate of cosmic consciousness itself, connecting of information and experience every aware being in networks that span the entire universe. The journey into quantum consciousness theories ultimately confronts us with the most fundamental question of all. What does it mean to be human in a universe where consciousness and cosmos are intimately connected? If awareness really does interface with quantum fields that extend throughout space and time, then every human life represents a unique experiment in cosmic information processing. Consider the profound responsibility this places on each individual. Your personal growth isn't just about improving your own circumstances or achieving individual goals. It becomes a contribution scales when you develop greater emotional to the evolution of consciousness on universal intelligence, expand your capacity for compassion, or achieve deeper understanding of reality. You're not just enhancing your personal experience. You're adding new patterns to cosmic information networks that other conscious beings might access across vast distances of space and time. This perspective transforms education from the transmission of existing knowledge to the development of capacities for accessing universal intelligence. Instead of simply memorizing facts and learning predetermined skills, education might focus on cultivating the mental clarity, emotional coherence, and ethical sensitivity that enhance just what to think would learn not quantum consciousness interfaces. Students, but how to access for human relationships become equally and wisdom that exist beyond individual neural networks. The implications broader patterns of information profound. If consciousness really does involve quantum entanglement effects between closely connected individuals, then every intimate relationship becomes a laboratory for exploring expanded awareness. The deep bonds between parents and children, romantic partners, close friends, or collaborative colleagues might create genuine quantum correlations that allow shared access to information and experience. This doesn't mean you can read other people's thoughts directly, but it suggests that the invisible connections between people who share strong emotional bonds might involve actual information when they're far away, the mysterious know when they need support, even love, the way you sometimes itive insights you have about someone you transfer through quantum field mechanisms, the into in close relationships, synchronicities that occur. All of these phenomena become more understandable if consciousness into collective consciousness effects operates through quantum entanglement networks. Researched common goals can achieve states of cohere is revealing that groups of people working together to warrant awareness that exceed what individual minds could accomplish independently. Scientific research teams report breakthrough insights that seem to emerge from the collective intelligence of the group rather than from any individual researcher. Creative collaborations produce works that transcend what any single artist could create alone. Even business organizations find that teams operating in states of coherent focus can solve complex problems through insights that appear to come from sources beyond individual knowledge and experience. The quantum field perspective suggests these effects aren't merely psychological or social phenomena. They might represent genuine instances of collective quantum consciousness, where individual awareness networks merge temporarily into larger coherent systems capable of accessing broader patterns of cosmic information. The group becomes more than the sum of its parts because it gains access to intelligence that exists at quantum field, perhaps the most transformative levels beyond individual neural processing. But plication concerns humanity's relationship to the natural world. If consciousness is connected to universal quantum fields, then the traditional separation between human awareness and natural systems becomes untenable. The quantum fields that underlie your consciousness are the same fields that govern the behavior of atoms in distant stars, the growth patterns of plants and animals, the complex dynamics of weather systems and geological processes. This suggests that developing deeper connection to natural environments might enhance your capacity for quantum consciousness experiences. The ancient traditions that emphasize communion with nature, from indigenous shamanic practices to contemplative retreats in wilderness settings, might represent practical techniques for accessing broader patterns of cosmic information through interface with the quantum field network systems. Modern that connect all natural spending extended time in natural environments show increased measures of creativity from the Schumann resonances beginning to validate some of these traditional fields generated by natural systems for maintaining humanity's capacity for expanded awareness. The destruction research is limiting human potential for accessing cosmic intelligence. This perspective offers entirely of Earth's atmosphere to the subtle quantum coherence in neural tissue. If problem-solving ability and reported experiences of expanded awareness. The electromagnetic field effects of living forests appear to influence approaches. Studies of people and disrupt climate that consciousness can interface with, thereby consciousness really does interface with cosmic information networks, then protecting human consciousness in ways that enhance of complex ecosystems might not just eliminate species, and preserving natural environments becomes essential richness and diversity of quantum field patterns, new approaches to environmental ethics and sustainability systems. It might also reduce the systems as partners in cosmic information processing. Every ecosystem represents a unique pattern of quantum field organization that contributes distinctive resource to be mana. Jed for human benefit, we might recognize natural human cultural diversity as well. Different cultures and diversity becomes a way of maintaining the full spectrum of cosmic intelligence available to conscious beings. The implications extend to, instead of viewing nature as information to universal consciousness networks, protecting biode traditions might represent unique approaches to interfacing with cosmic consciousness ages, artistic and philosophical innovations from different historical periods. All of these cultural achievements might preserve essential knowledge about how consciousness can access universal information patterns. If quantum consciousness theories are correct, then the homogenization of human culture represents not just a loss of diversity, but a reduction in humanity's collective capacity for cosmic intelligence. Each cultural tradition that disappears takes with it unique methods for developing expanded awareness and accessing cosmic information networks. Preserving cultural diversity becomes a matter of maintaining the full range of human consciousness technologies. The convergence of quantum physics and consciousness research is pointing toward practical applications that could revolutionize human potential. Researchers are developing training programs that combine ancient contemplative techniques with modern biofeedback technologies. Participants learn to recognize and enhance the mental states that promote quantum coherence in neural systems while monitoring their progress through real-time measurements of quantum field correlations. Early results suggest that these integrate to cosmic intelligence, but spiritual gifts available only to exceptional approaches can systematically develop capacities for expanded awareness that were once considered rare individuals. People report accessing states of consciousness characterized by enhanced creativity, expand problems, and profound experiences of connectionative insights into complex empathy, direct intuitionally. Just as learning to drive a car requires instruction in both the mechanical operation of the vehicle and the ethical responsibilities of participating in traffic systems, developing quantum consciousness capabilities more than just learning techniques. It involves fundamental consciousness capabilities, requires transformations in how individuals developing quantum. The sense of being and their relationship to reality within a physical body gives understand themselves phenomenon that extends way to recognition of consciousness as a feel. These transformations aren't always a separate self-isolate, comfortable or easy. Many people experience periods fluid and inclusive. Personal identity becomes more far beyond individual boundaries of disorientation as their familiar sense of self exhilarating and overwhelming. Support. The boundaries between self and other, between permeable in ways that can be both XD states of consciousness safely and beneath individual awareness and cosmic intelligence, become increasingly encompassing broader patterns of awareness and information, and to include wider networks of consciousness systems and guidance from experienced practitioners become essential for navigating these. Expand requires guidance in both the technical aspects of accessing cosmic information networks and the ethical implications of participating in universal intelligence systems. The research suggests that consciousness expansion through quantum field interfaces naturally networks. Indigenous wisdom traditions, contemplative practices from various spiritual lines promotes ethical behavior and concern for the well-being of others. As individual awareness expands to include broader patterns of cosmic information, people report increased empathy, compassion, and motivation to contribute positively to collective human development. The boundaries between self-interest and universal well-being become less distinct as consciousness recognizes its fundamental interconnection with all aware beings. This offers hope for addressing some of humanity's greatest challenges. If enough people develop capacity for accessing cosmic intelligence networks, we might find solutions to problems like climate change, poverty, disease, and through ordinary thinking processes alone. The collective conflict that transcend what individual human minds could discover, intelligence that emerges from quantum consciousness, networks might provide insights and innovations that individual neural networks could never achieve independently. The quantum field theories of consciousness are still speculative, still controversial, still very much works in progress. But they're pointing toward possibilities that could fundamentally transform our understanding of what it means to be conscious beings in a quantum universe. The experimental evidence continues to accumulate, the theoretical frameworks continue to evolve, and we may be approaching a scientific revolution that makes the shift from classical to quantum physics look like a minor adjustment in our understanding of reality. Whether consciousness really is connected to cosmic information networks that span galaxies and eons remains an open question. But if these theories prove correct, then every moment of awareness becomes an act of cosmic participation, and the greatest adventure in human consciousness might be just beginning.